You know, I never thought mowing my own lawn would start a war. But in this neighborhood, even grass could get you fined. It started on a humid Saturday morning in July. The sun was already baking the driveway, and I was out front in old jeans, trying to fix the sprinkler that my dog had chewed through again. My wife, Hannah, had just come back from her night shift, 12 hours straight at the hospital, and was catching a few hours of sleep before her next shift. We lived in a small, quiet neighborhood managed by an HOA, the kind of place that loved rules more than people. They had a list for everything: how tall your grass should be, what color your blinds had to match, even how long your trash cans could sit by the curb. And I wasn't exactly their favorite neighbor. A few weeks earlier, I'd gotten a letter, bright pink, saying my lawn was unacceptable. Apparently, 3 dandelions in 1 crooked mailbox were an eyesore to the community. I laughed. Hannah didn't. She said, "Let it go, John. Not worth the stress." She always tried to calm me down, balance me out. She had that kind of peace in her, the kind that comes from seeing the worst of humanity and still believing in kindness. But me, I was stubborn. I'd served in the army, built my own home from scratch, and didn't like being told how to live, especially not by a group of people who held clipboards for a living. So when I got the 3rd notice in 2 weeks, saying I was being fined $250 for non-compliance, I snapped. I wrote them back, not politely, and said, "Come take the check out of the lawn yourself. Maybe then you'll see it's fine." I shouldn't have written that. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. Not the friendly kind, the kind that echoes in your chest. I wiped my hands on a towel, opened it, and there they were. 2 police officers. Behind them stood Mr. Whitman, the HOA president himself, arms folded, wearing his usual smug little smile like he'd just caught a criminal. "Mr. Clark," the taller officer said, "we received a report of aggressive and threatening behavior toward an HOA representative." I blinked. "You mean the letter?" Mr. Whitman stepped forward, his voice sharp and self-righteous. "Your correspondence was hostile and threatening. We take these things seriously." I looked at him, then the cops, then back at him. "You called the police, because of a letter." He crossed his arms tighter. "You told me to come onto your property. That's a threat." One of the officers sighed. He looked embarrassed, honestly. But rules are rules, and someone had to follow up. I could feel my jaw clench. My pulse pounded in my temples. I wanted to yell, to tell him how ridiculous he was, but before I could say a word, a voice came from behind me. Firm, calm, commanding. "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" We all turned, and there she was, my wife, Hannah. Still in her uniform, badge gleaming on her chest. Her dark hair tied up, her presence cutting through the tension like a blade. The officers froze mid-sentence. Mr. Whitman's smirk disappeared. "Officer Clark," one of them said, his tone instantly respectful. "Didn't realize this was your residence." She nodded slightly. "It is. My husband's the homeowner. What seems to be the emergency?" Mr. Whitman stammered. "Well, we had a concern about his behavior." She folded her arms, her voice steady as stone. "So you sent police officers to our home because of a letter about grass?" The taller cop looked down at his notepad, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. "Ma'am, it was called in as a possible threat. We just had to follow protocol." Hannah took a step forward, her eyes locking on Mr. Whitman. "With all due respect, sir. Next time you feel unsafe, maybe start with a conversation, not an emergency call. There are real people who need help right now." Her tone wasn't angry, it was the kind of calm that demands respect. The kind that makes everyone else shrink a little. Mr. Whitman didn't respond. He just mumbled something about rules and expectations, then hurried off down the walkway, pretending to check his clipboard. The cops apologized, said they'd close the case, and left quietly. I closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling hard. And Hannah, she just smiled that tired smile, the one she gave her patients when they panicked. "Maybe next time, honey," she said softly, "let me handle the letters." That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. A week later, we got another letter, not a fine this time, but a summons to an HOA hearing. Apparently, I'd intimidated a board member, and disrespected community standards. It felt like a joke. But Hannah, as always, told me to stay calm. "I'll come with you," she said. And she did. When we walked into that community center, it was like stepping into a courtroom. 5 board members sat behind a long table, all with folders and nameplates. Mr. Whitman was in the center, acting like some kind of judge. He started reading off complaints: grass too long, fence too rustic, mailbox improperly aligned. Each time, I could feel my frustration building. Finally, I leaned forward. "You realize you're harassing us, right, Mr. Whitman looked up, his glasses slipping down his nose. "You're violating the HOA code, Mr. Clark. This isn't personal." Hannah put a hand on my arm before I could respond. Then she stood up, walked to the front, and said quietly, "Actually, it is personal." The room went silent. She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This," she said, "is a citation report from last month. You see, while you were writing fines about lawns, I was working in the ER trying to save a 6-year-old who nearly drowned in your community pool." The board looked uncomfortable. "I've seen more humanity in one night at that hospital," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "than I've seen in 3 months of your letters. You treat neighbors like suspects, not people. My husband served this country. He built our home with his own hands. And he deserves better than to be treated like a criminal because he missed mowing a patch of grass." She paused, her voice breaking just enough to make the silence sting. "I'm not here to argue about weeds. I'm here to remind you, we live in a community. That means compassion. That means grace." For a moment, nobody said anything. Even Mr. Whitman just sat there, fidgeting with his pen. Then one of the older board members, a woman with kind eyes, spoke up. "Officer Clark, you're right. We've lost perspective. Thank you for saying that." And just like that, the meeting shifted. The board voted to drop all fines, remove the citation, and, get this, revise the HOA code to include consideration for residents under service or hardship. For the first time, Mr. Whitman didn't have anything to say. That night, when we got home, Hannah and I sat on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. The dog was snoring at our feet. I looked at her, exhausted but glowing, and said, "You know, you didn't have to do that." She smiled. "I know, but sometimes people need reminding that power doesn't make you right, kindness does." I laughed softly. "You're amazing, you know that." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "No, I just don't like bullies." A few days later, we got a knock again, but this time, it wasn't the police. It was Mr. Whitman. He looked different. No clipboard, no arrogance, just a man holding a small box. He cleared his throat. "Mr. and Mrs. Clark, I came to apologize." I didn't say anything, just waited. He looked at Hannah, eyes softening. "What you said at that meeting, it stuck with me. I've been doing this job for 10 years, and somewhere along the way, I forgot it was about people." He handed her the box. Inside was a plaque. It read, "For service, compassion, and reminding us what community means." Hannah smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Then he turned to me. "And Mr. Clark, your lawn looks fine." We all laughed. The weeks that followed were peaceful. Neighbors started waving again. The HOA stopped sending letters. And somehow, our little corner of the world felt a bit warmer. Every now and then, I'd catch Hannah standing by the window, looking out at the street with that quiet smile, like she'd just finished fixing something bigger than a policy. And I realized, she'd fixed us, because it wasn't really about lawns or rules. It was about remembering that behind every complaint, every house, every door, there's a story. A person, a family. We all forget that sometimes. But if you're lucky, someone like Hannah will remind you. A few months later, the HOA sent out a newsletter. Right on the front page was a new rule. Acts of service and community contribution will be recognized and celebrated. And underneath that rule was a picture, Hannah in her uniform, smiling with a few kids from the neighborhood she'd helped teach CPR to. I remember thinking, that's the kind of world I want to live in. One where rules don't matter more than people. Where kindness isn't just a story, it's policy. Now, when I mow the lawn, I still think about that day. The cops, the letters, the anger. But mostly, I think about her, standing there in that doorway, calm and strong, reminding everyone what real authority looks like.